All right, we are live. And so I'm Thomas Folden with the Nesting Realty Group, residential realtor here in El Paso. And I'm joined by Rosie and Jorge, also residential realtors here in El Paso. Rosie, say hello.
Hi guys, good morning.
And Jorge, say hello.
Hey, hi guys, good morning.
Awesome. And we're also welcomed by Edward Araujo from Texas Consumer Credit Services. Edward, say good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. How's everybody?
I'm doing awesome. I am loving all the extra free family time that I'm getting, and all the extra chores that my wife is giving. She's such a giving spirit, and I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Rosie, how we looking here?
That was?
How we looking here?
Yeah, we're on. You're
Okay.
good.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Edward, just real quick, this is episode 3, 4-part series, Texas Consumer Credit Services. Today we're talking a little bit about the credit report, and go ahead, man, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Thomas. So, yeah, today I wanted to dive into, I know we had mentioned last time, to try to pull your credit report if you did, and you can kind of follow along. I can't actually share credit report, but if you have your credit report, we're going to talk about kind of a specific section. So the meat of your credit report, the biggest part or the thing that impacts you the most is payment history, right? So what we're going to be talking about today specifically are some negative accounts like charge-offs and collections. And I want to talk about them because it's one of the main things that when people say they have credit issues, a lot of times they're talking about collections or charge-offs. And there's a lot of misinformation out there, vague information, wrong information as far as how they impact you, how they can report. So I wanted to clear a lot of that up today and tell you guys the reality of it and what can be done and what can't. And also I'm going to speak on how some of those particular accounts impact not only your credit score, but purchasing a home. Because that's what a lot of our clients' goals are, and that's why we partner like with the Nesting Realty Group to help home buyers. And I know they get a lot of these questions as realtors, so I kind of want to put a focus on that. So you have collections and charge-offs, okay? And a lot of times on your credit report, if you look at it, it'll almost say a charge-off / collection. So it should really it can't be both. It should really either be a charge off or a collection. Okay. Now, the difference is a charge off is usually from the original creditor. So let's say you have a Capital One credit card. Okay. And you go 30, 60, 90, all the way up to 180 days late, 6 months, and it becomes uncollectible and they charge it off. They basically say it's bad debt. They can't collect from you. Okay. Now, that is a negative account, obviously. Okay. Now, a charge-off can have a balance or not a balance. So what happens is at that point, a lot of creditors, they'll either transfer or sell the debt to a collection company, or they try to collect the debt on their own through their own internal, collection processes. Now, what I hear a lot, and I've been seeing this, and it upsets me sometimes, honestly, because they're putting this information out there. Is there's a specific thing going around Instagram and Facebook where they literally say, it's a guy on stage saying, you might have seen it, did you know that if a charge off or collection is older than 6 years old, or if they sell your debt, if they transfer debt, you don't owe it anymore? And that can be, there's nothing farther to the truth than that. That is absolutely wrong. Okay. When you have a contract with your credit card company, creditor, that debt can be assigned. Realtors may associate that with like assigning a contract or something. When you're in wholesaling things, you assign the rights or whatever over of that contract or debt. So it does not mean you don't owe it. People have gotten in trouble where they think that, and they'll sue you if it's a big enough amount and they want to come after you. So here's what can happen. If a company like Capital One sells your debt or transfers it to a collection company, okay, that's perfectly legal. And what will happen is you will have a Capital One charge off, and then you will have a collection from, for example, ERC, enhanced recovery.
So it'd be like two accounts on your credit report.
Two entries on there.
Sure.
So the bad thing about that is it's almost like a double whammy, right? Like you have two entries stemming from the same account or same incident. So you're kind of getting hit twice. Now, there's things that they have to follow, and this is what I would want you to check out on your credit report, okay? If your charge off and says it's been transferred or sold or something like that, they have to report a zero balance, okay? You can't have the collection company and the original creditor, the original hospital, the original credit card company, both reporting the debt, okay? Right. So that's something that they can't do. So look out for that, okay? But the thing is, that charge off, even though you don't owe it, still impacts your credit, okay? Because it's part of your record. Same thing with a collection, a paid collection and unpaid collection impact your score the same way. The way I like to explain it, and this is the best way I've found, you might have heard me say it before, it's almost like a ticket, like a traffic or speeding ticket, right? You get that ticket, you have to go pay it, right? So you don't get a warrant or you don't, it doesn't escalate. But when you pay that ticket, it's still on your record, right? It can still impact your insurance. It's still part of it. It's not the amount it's the fact that happened, right? So it still impacts your credit score.
Yeah, I remember somebody explained to me a little while ago, your credit is a sign of your credit worthiness. And then all of the, lenders from whatever companies, they're taking a look at it to see whether or not they should invest in you. And that's
exactly,
it's an investment. Exactly. Should they make this investment, or is it risky? Is
exactly. It's like another way to look at it. Exactly. Let's say you let me borrow $100, that's right? Mm-hmm. And I tell you, I'm going to pay you on Friday. Okay. I don't pay you Friday. I don't pay you the Friday after that. I don't pay you 6 months after that. Right. And you give up, basically. You're like, I'm never going to get this money. Okay, fine, right?
Yeah, but you ain't borrowing again.
Yeah, no, but then I come back a year later and I pay you. And I turn right back around and say, hey, can I borrow $1,000? You're probably, that's the way to kind of look at it, right? It's not, you paid it, but you didn't honor your contract.
Sure.
That you entered, right? That you're going to pay this amount every month, or that you were, whatever the agreement was. So that's a way to think about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Now, we're not saying, and again, quick disclaimer, this isn't legal advice, tax advice, or anything. We always have to say that, right? Not to say, me as a board certified credit consultant advisor, we never say don't pay your collections or bills. That's all another misconception. I just want people to understand what happens when you pay and when you don't, what the consequences are and what it does.
Right.
Okay. So we know about those two both being on your credit report. Okay. Credit reporting in most cases is voluntary, with the exception of a couple of things like child support and certain things that they have to report, right? But let's say you take out a loan at a local, like what's one of our local ones here in El Paso, like a regional finance, these loan places, right? It's up to them, if you don't pay them, if they want to report that on your credit report. No, they don't have to, okay? So what we have to understand, what I'm getting at, is that your debt and your credit report are two separate things. You can legally owe a collection company, a loan, these loan places, and it may not be on your credit report. Okay, it doesn't mean you don't owe them. It doesn't mean you may not get collection calls, whatever the case may be. So those are separate. Okay, so when a client's asking me what they should do for certain things, I'm answering from the perspective of how it's going to improve their score. Okay. Yeah. So first of all, once it's a charge off, you don't owe that creditor anymore. Okay. For the most part. Okay. They've sold it. They've sold off their rights or whatever to collect on it. A lot of times they sell it for pennies on the dollar, right? If it's $1,000 debt, these collection companies buy it for like $100 or something. And that's why they offer you these deals. Okay. If the charge off still has a balance and you owe the credit card company, then you can call the credit card company and deal with them directly. Okay. So here's what happens once it goes to a collection. Collection is what most people are more familiar with when there's these collection companies. This is when you get these collection letters, you start getting these collection calls. They're trying to offer you deals. A lot of times they're very aggressive, right? And they're getting you to try to pay. So there is a law called the FDCPA, which is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Okay. And it regulates and oversees how these collectors, what they can and can't do. Okay. So when a collection account, the first thing I'm looking at when it's a collection is you want to validate the debt, meaning you want to make sure that that collection company is actually legally entitled to collect and report on that debt. Okay, so this is one of the things that I'm going to provide everybody at the end of the series is a simple debt validation letter. To whenever you get a collection letter in the mail, you're going to fire off this debt validation letter within 30 days. Okay, you'll be surprised how many of these collection letters are from junk debt buyers. Okay, they're not licensed, they're not bonded, or they may be licensed and bonded, but they're doing things they're not supposed to. There's certain things they can't say in these letters. They can't say, if you pay this, your score is going to go up. For example, that's one of the things we see because they don't know, right? You can't guarantee that. So you should fire that off right away, and that stops a lot of reporting, and they can't do certain things until they respond, okay? That's the first step. You always want to, before you pay anything, even if you do want to pay it, even if you know it is yours, you want to make sure it's valid. Okay. So now let's say it is valid. They send it back and it's on your credit report. Okay. The FDCPA, well, there's statute of limitations, and this gets confusing. So I want to separate these two. Remember, we're talking about your debt and your credit report. Okay. There's an amount of time that they have to sue you, and there's an amount of time, there's how long it can stay on your credit report. Okay. The amount of time that they can sue you varies by state. So I'll use Texas as an example because this is where we are. It's 4 years. I think I touched on this the other day, right? That's how long they have to sue you. What I hear, a big misconception though, is that after those 4 years, you don't owe it or they can't collect anymore. They can't, you still owe it. You will actually always owe it unless you pay it or you go to bankruptcy. And they can still collect on it. They just can't sue you. Okay. So they can't threaten to sue you. And they can't sue you. So even if they're saying, if you don't pay us, you're going to do this, right? So it gives you a little bit of leverage after 4 years to where you can work out, maybe get a better deal with them. Say, well, basically tell them, well, you can't sue me. Take, so much. Okay. So that's a big difference I want people to understand is it doesn't mean you don't owe it. Doesn't mean they can't collect. It just means they can't sue you. And that varies by state. Okay. So you would want to look up per state, and that's maybe something I can provide to you all. And there's different types of contracts written, different oral, different types of contracts. But that's an important thing to know. 7 years, that you hear that 7 years a lot, that's how long it can be on your credit report. Okay. So they may not be able to sue you, for example, in Texas after 4 years, but it's going to be on your credit report. Okay. So those are the two differences. Another thing I hear a lot with collections is that, well, they sell it, let's say, because even collection companies sell it to another collection company. They can't collect. They say, hey, we'll sell it to you for this much and see if you can collect, right? I hear a lot of times that when they sell it, that it restarts like the time clock. Okay.
Oh, that's tough.
And it doesn't. That 7 years of how long it can be on your credit report is 7 years. Okay. So if they sell it at 6 years, that this new collection company can only report on there for a year.
So how can we be sure that it's linked?
I'm sorry?
How can we be sure that the two accounts are linked, to the first time frame?
Because it
initial
should
reporting.
say, so first of all, like when they sell it, there should always be a note on there, like who the original creditor was, right? So we got two collection companies and it's both from Capital One, right? Now this collection company is reporting zero and then there's a new collection company. That's how you can tell, right? But you still also want to ask the new collection company to validate the debt, and you're going to ask for the date of first delinquency. That's when that time clock starts. Okay, it's not on most credit reports. Is it coincidence? I mean, probably, right? So you have to, in most cases, ask for it. We ask for all of our clients. Okay, so that 7 years cannot be restarted. That's your credit report. That the collection being on your credit report. Now, those 4 years, again in Texas, the 4 years, that can be restarted. Okay, with certain activities. So if you go give a payment, okay, let's say you work out a payment plan with them, that restarts the 4 years. So let's say you give 2 payments and then you stop again, they have 4 years where they can sue you again now. Okay, so that's why a lot of times you'll get collection companies that say, we want to work with you, just give us $25 and let's start working from there. Well,
that
they're
gives
probably
them
more
leverage.
interested, not the $25.
Yeah.
But now they've got 4 years to where now they can tell you, if you don't pay us the rest of the 1,000, we can sue you. And what happens is most people don't show up, and that's where you start getting these default judgments on your credit report. Okay, so those are 2 other things. Now, Rosie, before we got on, mentioned a couple important things that you guys hear a lot about student loans and medical bills. Okay, and there's a lot of misinformation out there about those. Okay, a collection account hurts your score. A medical collection. Okay, it's treated just like any other collection. Okay, a lot of times what you hear is that no, under 2,000 they don't hurt you. Only over 2,000. For a mortgage, it doesn't hurt you. So here's the thing. There's a difference from an account hurting your credit score and an account hurting your chances of approval. Okay, so for example, I deal with a lot of the mortgage lenders and we have this issue sometimes. Sometimes someone will come to me and say, my mortgage lender, loan officer said, don't worry about these 3 medical bills that are $300. Okay. Well, most of the time, what the mortgage lender means is that they don't have to include those accounts into like your DTI. Okay. Or they can set them aside in certain times because they're medical. But if you have a 550 credit score, those medical bills are still hurting your credit score. Okay, so those are 2 different things that we want to look at, right? So an account, when you have a collection, whether it be medical or any collection, it's going to hurt your credit score. Okay, one thing is if they're hurting your credit score, and one thing is does a mortgage lender have to include it like in your monthly debt and things like that. Okay, so a lot of times that's why once we get to the root of it, the lender will say, oh yeah, it's because it's a big medical collection, right? Like 30,000 that would affect their DTI. And by the way, your DTI is your debt to income ratio, right? That's going to determine not if you can buy the house, but like how much of a payment you can have and how much of a home you can have, right? So they don't include that because sometimes you have $100,000 medical bill. That would throw you out. Like if they do their normal formula to, like if you're going to pay that off, you wouldn't be able to afford a $200 payment, right? Because of that debt. So that's why they set it aside. Okay. If it's not medical, let's say you've got a $10,000 collection. Okay. The mortgage lender has a formula that they divide up and they do this formula and they say, okay, we got to figure in a $50 a month payment for that collection. That affects your DTI. Okay. So that may be a reason why a lender may tell a client to pay a collection. Okay. Not to improve their score. Okay. Even though sometimes people think that, or there's some lenders that even think that, but it's because they need to get rid of that debt to be able to afford that $1,250 payment. Because right now they can only, fit into their DTI $1,000 payment. Okay. So those are the differences where that impacts you. Now, the good thing about fixing your credit or disputing, legally challenging, let's say a collection for removal from your credit report, if you remove it from your credit report, And I'm going to, again, show you guys how to find errors on there. There's some obvious ones like I was showing on there, right? If it's past 7 years, if the balance is wrong, things like that. Let's say you find an error, you dispute it, and it comes off of your credit report. That helps your credit score, but guess what it also helps? Your DTI. Okay, because your lender can only include in your monthly bills what's on your credit report. That's why a lot of times like utilities, they're not included, right? Because they're not on your credit report. Well, if that collection is removed from your credit report, now it's not impacting your DTI. Okay, so that's another good reason why you want to fight these collections for removal. Remember, paying a collection doesn't, in most cases, 99% of the time, is not going to remove it from your credit report. It's just going to be that paid speeding ticket. Okay, so that's why it's so important that you pull your credit report, like we were talking about, and try to fight as many of those. Okay, again, credit are separate, and I know it gets a little confusing, when we're talking about this. But if you can just remember that your credit report is just a record. People report to it, some don't. It doesn't mean you owe it. It doesn't mean you don't. Okay, it just means that if it's on there, it's going to impact your score. If you take it off, doesn't mean you don't know it. It just means it's not on your credit report anymore.
Can you go over really quick, Edward, about deferring the student loans like we were talking about?
Yes, that's right. So the student loans. So a lot of times when we're having a consultation with the client, we'll ask them, do you know what's hurting your score? Do you know? And they'll say, well, I've got student loans. Okay. Well, just having student loans doesn't affect your credit positive or negative. It's like saying, well, I have a credit card. Okay. Most cases, what we're talking about is people have late payments or they've had student loans that are in default collection. Okay. Then in that case, they are hurting you. Okay. Anything can be fought to be removed from your credit report. We've removed student loans. They are difficult, but you can remove them. Again, it doesn't mean you don't owe them because you're always going to owe them. It may not mean they're not going to take your money or whatever, but getting them off your credit report, they don't impact your score anymore. Okay. Now, with payments being deferred, forbearance and things like that, what we see a lot of times is that they still get misreported. At the time that you're doing, let's say, paperwork or it's getting transferred to another servicer, during that transition period, they're showing late payments when you really weren't late. It's just that the first one is still showing it, or there's an overlap in there. So a student loan can be just like any other account. If it has negative information on it, it's going to impact your credit score. Okay. Now for a mortgage, and again, for the record, I'm not a mortgage lender. Some of these questions should be directed directly at a mortgage lender. But again, I work with them day in and day out, so we deal with this a lot. Back in the day, if a student loan was like in deferment, they didn't include it into that DTI. I don't know if you guys remember that. They didn't have to include that payment that you're going to have, right? Now they do, because chances are that you're going to have to pay off that student loan sometime within the next 30 years from when you have your mortgage, right? So they want to figure that into, can you afford paying your mortgage, and eventually when you get that student loan payment that you're going to pay, right? However it is that you're going to do it. So, but just deferring it, just getting it deferred itself doesn't negatively impact your credit score, as long as they report it right. They don't report a late payment or things like that. Okay, that's kind of what's happening right now with the whole the COVID-19 situation we've got going on. Is that a lot of places are doing forbearance or deferring payment, skip a payment, and things like that. And I want to make something clear to people that there's a lot of people, even in our office, we've gotten calls and saying, no, you can't charge me, or this person can't charge me, or they can't do this. And that's not the case. Okay. There's a lot of gray area right now. It's kind of, we're in a weird time because there's a lot of gray areas, and the way there's attorneys, there's people like me that do this all the time that still are seeing how do we specifically interpret like the CARES Act and things like that, right? So for example, right now, what it says is that you can contact your credit card company, right, your loan provider, and let them know that, you're going through something, and they can if they elect to work something out with you. Do they have to? Technically, no. Okay. Most of them are. Okay. Now, the way it is right now is if you go into an agreement with them, they're supposed to abide by it. If they say don't pay us payments for 6 months and we're not going to show late or anything on there, they're supposed to not report it late. Okay. Where I see it coming from, I deal with the credit bureaus and creditors every day. I have for years and years. They don't follow a lot of the laws that are laws, right? That's what we do is we fight these accounts to try to get them off, not because you don't owe them and you didn't, because they're not following certain laws. So what I see in the future is people going into some of these agreements and these creditors still not reporting right. Okay, still reporting a late payment, still reporting a collection or whatever the case may be. There's a positive way to look at this is that, yes, it may hurt your credit, but that will give you a reason to dispute. Okay.
Right, and be able to use those letters that you're going to provide in the
exactly.
Next
yeah. So we do what's called factual disputing, which means you can't just dispute something like we've talked about before because you want to and you don't like it. There has to be a reason, right? There's a lot of reasons because there's a lot of laws. You just have to find it. You can also be real general as long as you don't lie. What I mean is you can say, I believe or I think that I entered into an agreement with this company. I was under a lot of stress at the time, right? Like, I may be wrong. Can you research this and prove to me that what you're reporting is 100% accurate, timely, and verifiable? And if not, then you can try to get it deleted. Okay. So sometimes it's not also about like you've just found a specific error. Sometimes it's just like, you know what? This may be wrong. You need to investigate it and show me that if it's right, it's right. Okay. So sometimes that's what we dispute, like medical bills on. Rosie, is like you had insurance or you had assistance or whatever, and the insurance didn't pay it on the day they were supposed to, got sent to collections, but they did get paid. So there's things you can say like that, right? Well, I think I had insurance or it may have gotten transferred. So that's what disputing is, right? So that's kind of my opinion as being in the credit industry, see things that may be happening. Or people assuming that they're not going to get late payments during this. Remember, you have to contact your creditors. I think I've said it every time we've been on here, that you have to contact your creditors and make that arrangement, okay? Because if not, you can't go back and say, hey, well, it was during this time, okay? So that's an important thing, okay? But the main things I want people to get is that if you have a legitimate collection charge-off, you're going to owe it. Doesn't matter how much time passes. Doesn't matter if they sell it. It doesn't go away. Okay. There's certain laws they have to follow, but it doesn't go away, because I see this thing on my Facebook feed all the time, and this guy saying, did you know that after 6 months you don't owe it? Did you know that if they sell it, you didn't make a contract with that person, so you don't owe them? No, you do. I have clients that have been sued. Like, if they don't believe it, ask my clients that have been sued, or that if you owe it or not, right? A charge-off, for example, is an accounting term, okay? Like, if you go back and pay, they have to amend basically their books, okay? Now, there's different laws, and I'm going to provide you guys with a bunch of information at the end, Thomas, that you can provide to your clients of like the top 10 things to look for debt collection and credit report errors. And sometimes you'll get like a 1099 in the mail from a collection company. If you get that and they still show a balance, there's errors. They can't call you before 8 a.m. and I think after 9 p.m. They can't discuss certain things. So there's a lot of these things. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do, we work with some of the top FDCPA attorneys in the nation. To our clients, we provide it, but I'm going to offer it to everyone. I'm going on record here even telling you, and I'll set up a way to do it through a form that anybody can submit collection letters to us that you've received, and we'll have those reviewed by attorneys to see if they're legit. Okay. If the attorneys find errors on there, they will basically just contact you and say, do you mind if we represent you and sue this collection company? No cost to you. What they'll do is they take some fees out of the settlement, right? If it's $3,000, they take 10, 20, 30, whatever the percentage may be. Maybe there's not any errors, but at the very least, they're going to say, yeah, this is legit. Send out a debt validation. Just make sure everything's on the up and up. So at least you know, sometimes there's been people that pay a collection company and then they get another collection company call them and they say, no, I paid you. Like, no, you didn't pay us. And they'll provide all the paperwork that they really have it. And it was a junk debt buyer that found out that you owe. There's literally companies that'll call up. You can find a lot of this information, but they don't even have any information. A lot of people have medical bills, right? And they'll just randomly say, you had a medical collection about 3 years ago, this and that. You owe this and this and that. Send payment to this, or we're going to sue you. And people will just send money.
Yeah, I've seen that with,
right?
Hey, we see that you owe this money on your student loan. Like, I don't have student loans.
Yeah. There's crazy stuff that goes out there. They prey, on the elderly sometimes and things like that. And they're good at what they do. Okay. I mean, they're trained, the way they intimidate, the way they threaten, they're good at collecting money. Right. And don't get me wrong, not all collection agencies are bad. Right. Just like in any industry, but you just want to make sure everyone is following the guidelines on the up and up. If you owe it, you owe it. Okay. Yes, you can use the law and your rights to try to get things off your credit report. Maybe if they're not following the law, get the debt dismissed and a settlement. But I always go back to, it's nothing about being shady or lying. It's about knowing your rights, knowing what they've got to do, and just following the process. I tell my clients sometimes it's not black and white. It's not that I can tell you this account can be deleted or not, or all or not. Some accounts can't be deleted. It's like a client and a lawyer being guilty. You're like, you're guilty. You're basically telling me, when you're their lawyer, but we're trying to see what, we can do here. That's kind of like when you have a collection, right? I literally had to tell clients at the end, you do owe this and it is yours. We're trying to fight it because yes, this is wrong. But at the end of the day, this did happen, right? So it's not like it can just disappear. Okay. That's a lot that I have on those. Again, paid or unpaid, they still hurt your credit score. Not saying don't pay it, because again, if it's within 4 years, you don't pay it, they can potentially sue you. The higher the amount, the more likely. Just know that if you pay it, it doesn't improve your credit score. But if you get off your credit report, doesn't mean you don't owe it. So ideally, you'd like to get it off your credit report and not owe it, right? Pay it. Then
right.
Not on your credit report, you don't owe it, right? So again, it's not that I'd ever tell someone not pay it, don't pay it. I just want you to understand, if you pay it, what happens? If you don't pay it, what happens? Okay.
I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions. I pulled my own credit report because I knew there was a couple of things on there I wanted to ask you questions about. So maybe this will key a couple of things that you can chit chat about. So for the first thing, we mentioned it in either the first or the second episode about the different addresses, but also I have an AKA, also known as Tom H. Folden. My middle name is Alan, so H, that's not me. That's not who I am. But it says I'm also known as Tom H. Folden. And then I have 2 addresses that are on here that are not where I live anymore. And then also the employers are both former employers. So maybe you can touch on those a little bit.
Yeah. So those are your personal identifiers that we call, right? Now, those don't have a direct impact on your credit score, right? Because there's an old address doesn't mean your score is affecting your score. But what it does affect is, like we're talking about, I think it was the first episode, is that the way accounts are put on, aggregate onto your credit report, is by matching or attaching to those personal identifiers. Okay? So if there is a Thomas H. Folden, or maybe a Thomas that's not even Folden, that lives at an old address that you live on, matching those 2 things can maybe cause a collection that Thomas says to be on your credit report.
Right.
Right. So you want to make sure to remove those. Now, the way things get on there, there's a lot of different ways. I've had someone to where they, on an application where they're applying for something, where they got an account somewhere, furniture or something, they accidentally put the wrong middle initial, and that got reported. Or they accidentally spelled their name, or it looked like something. There's a lot of ways, because your creditors and everything's reporting this data, right? There's a lot of different ways that it gets on there. So yeah, we'll always see that. So you wanna, with the letters I'm gonna provide you, or this one's real simple. You can just write a letter to the credit bureaus and say, I pulled my credit report. I see that there's some, inaccuracies in there. The only name that should be on there is this, this, and this. Please remove anything else. The only address that should be on there is this and this. Please remove everything else. The only employer people. I actually prefer to have not even your employer on there, or potentially not even some information on there, because the less likely that there's accounts to get mixed up or attach on there.
Sure.
Okay. So that's definitely where you're starting. That's usually the first part of your credit report. So as you can see, you can attest to and you should see, once you get responses back from the bureaus, if you do that, the other ones that aren't even on that report, because there's certain limited fields that they can put on there. I've had people with like 25 AKAs.
Wow.
So like George and Jorge and like a middle initial, and to like all Zaragoza with an S and Z, like they're crazy, right?
Wow.
People that live in apartment complexes and like different apartment numbers, like they lived in 30 apartments, like crazy stuff, right? So yeah, that's definitely where you start, Thomas. And that doesn't mean that you delete that and your score is going to go up, right? But if there's an account on there that may be on there that you didn't know, it may remove it, or it's going to help you avoid something from popping up later in the future.
Sure.
Because a Thomas Holden moves into your old residence or has a similar birthday.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm going to run through a little bit that's on my account summary, and maybe touch on a little bit of what should be important to me. And it's going to lead into a question I put in the chat down here. So open credit cards, open retail cards, real estate loans, self-reported accounts, open installment loans, then total open accounts, accounts ever late collections, average account age, that's another good one, and then the oldest account. So the first thing that I want to touch on is the question I put in the chat is, earlier you said that utilities are not on your credit report, but this year I've noticed that you're allowed to be able to do this boost thing, and then
Experian boost,
yeah, so you do the boost and you could put in some of your utilities. Now, when you do that, does that affect your, maybe your debt to income, or how does that affect your credit report now that you're self-reporting that account?
That's a great question. It only impacts certain score models. Okay. Remember, there's different versions. Like when you buy a house, it's an old version and things like that. So the main one I like to answer is, because we deal with home loans and mortgages a lot, it doesn't impact that score. Okay. It doesn't impact that type of score, that version. It does impact some of the newer score models, so it may help your score, like when you're trying to get a cell phone or something. And it helps people that have a very thin file, that haven't had loans or anything. A lot of times they backtrack like that payment history and things like that. Okay. I didn't do it because I don't want to give the credit bureaus more data than they need.
Sure.
Basically. Okay. Because that's what credit bureaus are. The credit bureaus don't generate your score. They hold the data, and then FICO or Vantage uses that data to generate your score. Okay. So people tell me, Experian, when they say boost, they say because if you're this certain person that's a thin file, it'll impact this certain Experian score model, and it may go up by a certain amount of points. But it's really for people that have thin files or no credit, or not traditional credit that we call it. You guys may run into that with loans and things, right? To where they haven't had a loan. They haven't had credit cards, but they paid their rent, and they pay things that don't report, right? Like utilities and rent like that. So that's where it may kind of help. Again, we go back to maybe not, it might not even help your score as much, but it can help a qualification, right? To where you can show some payment history on there. So yeah, that's kind of, you probably want to look at that more if you have a thin file. If you've got enough accounts on there, it's not really going to do much. me, since I have a seasoned file and things like like that, there was no need to add it, and I don't want to provide them with more info than they already have. They have more information than you think, right? Like, they know more about us than we know about ourselves.
Then when you mentioned that, is there a way to, if I have done the boost, because I have, and now, sitting in this, I feel like I don't want to do that anymore. So can I stop that reporting and remove it?
You can always request anything to be removed, right? You can just probably contact the creditor. Yeah. Right. Or send in a dispute letter.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
But if it's on there already, it's not it's not a negative indicator.
Yeah. Well, it's not like it's affecting my score or anything like that. Like you said, I have a seasoned account as well.
Yeah.
And then, maybe leads into my next question, specifically about my average account age, 6 years, 8 months. And then my oldest account, 14 years, 10 months. How does that play into, my credit or anything like that?
So that's 15% of your score. Okay, 15% of your score is your age. So there's your average age of accounts and your age of file. And that's what you mentioned right now. So your average age is 6 years and something, but you've been on file, your oldest account is
14 years.
How many years?
Yes, 14 years, like 10 months, something like that.
Yeah, 14 years. Okay. So what happens is that's a pretty decent accounts are considered new when they're within 2 years. And then after that, they become aged basically. And after I think it's 12 years, they're considered like the most points, right? Age. Okay. So what happens, a lot of people where you bring your age down is when you're opening a bunch of new accounts. Where every time they're doing these payday loans and they get more money out and it's a new account, because now you have your 14-year-old one, but you've got 10 that are 1 year, right? And you average that out. Well, it brings that average down. Okay. So your age is important, right? It is 15.
I felt like you were talking about my kids. I got a 15-year-old and a 1-year-old. Like I'm bringing my average way down.
you're bringing your average down, right? So that's another reason why we tell people not to be opening new accounts all the time.
Got it. Don't open any new accounts. That's you're talking about my kids, right? Don't open any new accounts.
There you go. There's a lot of side effects that come along with opening a new account, right? Your DTI goes up, right?
I'm sorry.
So
man.
Just general rule, don't try to always be opening a bunch of new accounts. But yeah, that's 15% of your score is your age.
Got it. We're talking about credit again, right?
Real quick, Thomas, a cool thing is,
sure.
Did you know that your age, right?
Right.
Doesn't impact your credit score.
Okay.
It's the age of file.
Okay.
Right? Because you can be 50 years old and never had credit and only have a 3-year credit history, and someone that's 25 that started, right away.
Right.
So that's the difference, right? A couple things that aren't included in your credit report: how much you make, your salary, your age, things like that.
Right.
Don't impact your credit score.
Awesome. Well, that's all I have from my notes, anything like that. Rosie, do you have anything?
See if I got anything on my notes.
No, my questions were just about the student loans, but you covered that. So thank you for that. But any other questions right now? I don't have any.
And student loans, a little bit more on that. Where are we at? 40 something minutes. Okay. Since they never go, federal debt never goes away. Not through bankruptcy. If you owe taxes and student loans, you can't get rid of that in bankruptcy. Okay. Unlike collections and, not that you never owe them, but they, like in bankruptcy, you can get rid of them. Right. And after 4 years, they probably won't bother with it. It's off your credit report in 7 years. So you're going to have to address that debt sooner or later. Okay. So a lot of our clients, we tell them, consolidate, or there's forgiveness programs, or there's income-based, there's all these. I'm not a student loan expert by any means. Our job is to try to get them off your credit report, or at least get late payments removed from your credit report, but you're going to have to address that debt. Okay. One last thing I want to touch on, and I'll get into it in detail more in the last episode, but remember we mentioned that Something doesn't have to be on your credit report, right? If you owe it. If you noticed, most public records, there really shouldn't be any more, report on your credit report, unless they've been there for a long time, okay? So what that means is, let's say you don't pay that collection, you get served, you don't show up to court, and you get this judgment, okay? Since we're talking about mortgages, what I see happen a lot of times, and this has caused a lot of deals to fall through, is that the mortgage lender pulls the credit report, everything's fine, right? You get close to closing, the title company is doing their job, and they find a judgment, okay? 99% of the time, you're not going to close unless that judgment is paid, okay? And it's because really that judgment gets like first position, first lien, you don't pay, the house goes into foreclosure, that's going to get paid before the bank, so why they won't, title won't insure it and things like that. The reason I mentioned that is because I can delete a judgment, potentially, right? Anything on your credit report can potentially be removed, okay? And I see a lot of places saying, oh, judgment, yeah, don't worry, will be deleted. You're doing your client a disservice if you don't explain to them that, yes, I can remove it to help your credit score, but if you don't pay it, you may not get your home because the title company is probably going to find this, okay?
Yeah.
That's important. Collections, if they get taken off, that's fine, but a public record like that, a tax lien or a judgment, can be removed to help your credit score to qualify. But if it's not paid, now if you pay it and I get off your credit report, cool, right? They may find it, okay, it's paid, you don't owe it. Sounds like fine. But if it's a judgment that you owe, you're gonna have to take care of it. Because I've seen it happen. They'll remove a judgment or it's not on there, or they won't tell their lender, and everything's going smooth until the end. I don't know if it's happened to you guys yet, but at the time it was a $10,000 judgment. The client couldn't pay that.
Yeah.
There's exceptions sometimes. And again, I'm not a mortgage lender. There's different underwriting, but sometimes if you've been making payments towards it, they can set it aside. But in most cases, just be aware that if it's removed or if it's not reporting on your credit report and you know you have it, you want to be, a lot of people, what happens is that they're not open about it, right? And then it's not going to help you because if the title company finds it, now the house is ready. You have almost a closing date, all these things going on, and they might not be able to close. So remember, deleting things from your credit report is to help your score. Your debt doesn't disappear.
Sure. I was just looking at my notes when you were talking, and you spoke about judgments. I just worked a house, and thankfully it's going to be complete tomorrow. Everything's going to be good to go. And we knew everything in the beginning, but it just kind of like keyed my thought process on this. Now there was a divorce, and the divorce left the home, the interest to one person instead of the other, right? So the question is, when I get a divorce and they separate some of the debt, my name could still be on the debt and attached. If it's a credit card, any joint credit or anything like that, it could still be there. So how does that work? How does it affect my credit? What do I need to do both for a traditional credit card or a mortgage or something like that?
Okay. What you would want to do ideally is joint accounts. You'd want to close them. Okay. If it's a vehicle, refinance it just under one person's name. What usually happens, that doesn't happen, right? A lot of times you're not on good terms to do that. What happens is that you usually go get divorced or the divorce decree, and the judge says, you take this, you take that, okay? Your divorce decree does not supersede your original contract with the creditor.
Right.
Okay? So what I mean is, if the judge says, all right, Mr. Jones, you're going to pay the car. You're keeping the car. Mr. Jones doesn't pay the car, it's going to show up late in collection on Mrs. Jones' credit report.
Right.
Okay. Now, they may not be able to come after, in a lot of cases, Mrs. Jones for the debt. Remember, debt and credit reporting are separate,
right.
But it's going to impact her credit score.
Absolutely.
Okay. Again, you can try to go in and fight, to get it removed and everything. But a lot of times people tell me, well, the judge ordered her to pay it. That's not a reason to dispute, actually. Because Because when you sign that agreement, when you bought that car together and you both co-signed, the creditor is taking into consideration both of your income, both of your credit, right, to give you that qualification.
Right.
So it doesn't supersede. So yeah, a lot of those things are more serious than people think. In an ideal world, you'd say, okay, we've got this car. If you're going to keep it, you go refi, get it just under your name.
Yeah.
Let's close this credit card and get your own credit card in line.
Yeah.
Because if they're joint accounts, that can, and we've seen that.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing is I had a wife, I removed an account. Doesn't mean it's going to come off the husband's. Right. Joint accounts are joint accounts, but you each have your own individual credit report. So coming off one doesn't mean it comes off the other. But that's a great question because we get that a lot. I get a lot of people that come in, well, the judge says he's supposed to pay it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if he doesn't, it's still impacting your credit score, unfortunately.
Right. And then my final question, and we'll reach back out to Rosie and Jorge to see if they got anything. But let's say a credit card charges off the debt. Does the card itself remain active? And here's why I asked the question, because sometimes we have our auto withdrawals, auto payments, or something coming out of those credit cards. So if they charge off the debt and I got a collector and I'm taking care of it with the collector, does the credit card still remain active? And do I need to, because then it could affect, some debt on the other side, cause me to miss payments because the card's not active, or, maybe it is and I just don't know.
Yeah. In most cases, it's going to be closed way before that. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Many cases, it's going to be closed when you're like 60, 90 days late. They're going to close it. They don't want you. You haven't paid. They're not going to let you rack up more debt on it. Okay. So no, it's not going to be open. It won't. Okay. A quick caveat on that, on charge-offs and credit cards, right? Let's say you have a charge-off on your credit card, and your limit was $3,000. And normally when it's charged off, you owe more than your limit, right? Because you've gone over and there's all these late fees, so you owe $3,500. Here's the bad part. If it's still with the Capital One, the charge-off, they haven't sold it. No? Not only do you have a charge-off, it's impacting your utilization.
Got it. Yeah.
Right. So I've seen sometimes it's kind of weird. I've seen a score go up when a credit card company charges it off and sells it to a collection company, because now that's gone down to zero. So it's still a negative account, but that balance isn't affecting their utilization. Because with the collection company, it's not figured into your utilization because there's no limit and balance no more. It's just you owe it. Right. Versus when it's still with the original creditor and you have a limit and a balance. So that's kind of something that's kind of quirky. I've seen scores go up. It's sold to a collection company. So yeah, you got two accounts, but it was affecting their utilization so much that now it's zero.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird, but
I got like 2 days of great credit because it's down to zero for, and then the collection company ain't on there until, Monday. So let me get some more.
Be strategic about it. So yeah, so there's so many nuances and things with credit that we could talk every day for a year, for hours. My goal, and really what I try to just teach people the basics and the main things, to where if you know those, you can have good credit, pay your bills on time, keep your low credit card balances. If you had issues, in the past, you're gonna have to face them, sooner or later. Learn your rights, learn the laws, so you can fight certain accounts. I never go in and represent my clients and say they don't owe it if they do, or this. We just say, yeah, you know what, this happened, but you guys still got to follow the law.
Yeah.
And if you don't, we're not saying we're not going to pay you. We're not saying he didn't. We're saying you can't report this on the report because you're reporting wrong, untimely, or unverifiable information.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's reach out to Jorge. Do you have any questions, follow-ups, or anything like that?
No, you covered everything, Edward. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Rosie, we're running back to you.
No questions here, but I just want to thank Edward again for his time and for, explaining all that to us. And let them know again that if they want to do like a free consultation, they can always reach out to you. And then if you want to send me the link, I can put it in the comment box again.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. And also it's real easy. If you go to texasconsumercredit.org, as soon as you land on the page, there's buttons all over there to schedule a consultation. Okay. And I think I have the direct link to our calendar, but that's usually the best way. If you go to texasconsumercredit.org or .com, they'll both take you to the same place, I believe. It's all spelled out, texasconsumercredit.org or .com. You click on there. It's a free consultation. I would take advantage of it. Now, if you need help, I'll be honest with you, some of my consultants may pitch you our services, right? But they're only going to pitch our services if they think you need it. But they're always going to tell you can do it on your own. If you want to do it on your own, we'll even give you the resources to do it on your own. Some people just don't have the time or don't want to. Like before this whole stay-at-home stuff, I had like a yard, right? I'm actually doing it now because we're here, but I just didn't have time. I got more time now, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people just don't want to do it. That's why you hire an attorney and stuff. But take advantage of the free consultation. At the very least, you're going to have someone that knows what they're talking about. All of my consultants are trained directly by me. I've trained under John Alzheimer, that's worked for the credit bureaus, that's on CNN. He's one of the main guys, my mentor that's out there in this. We're board certified. We don't have to be. We just have to be licensed. We're board certified. Go above and beyond. I go experts and whatnot. So at the very least, you're going to have someone go over your credit report with you, whether it be me or one of my consultants, and tell you exactly what's affecting you, what's not, what you can potentially do, potential errors that are on there, and you'll have a much clearer picture of what you can do. Most people are surprised after going through that consultation. In both ways. Sometimes they're a lot surprised that it's not as bad as they thought, or they're surprised that it's worse than they thought. There's things that they didn't know affected them or not theirs or that are wrong.
Yeah.
They'll get a credit limit increase and it's not reporting on their credit report. So they increase it from 500 to 1,000, but it's still reporting 500 with an $800 balance.
Yeah.
Right. So there's so many things. So take advantage of that free consultation with my team. The credit report that they're going to ask you to pull, it's only $1 and you get your $1 back if you cancel it. So it's a win-win. I would, definitely urge everybody to take advantage of that.
Awesome. Well, just to echo again what Rosie was saying and Jorge as well, we definitely appreciate it. You coming on here and spending your time with us and educating us. And I've been having a credit report for a long time, and I'm still learning stuff. So again, I really appreciate that. I do have one sign-off question. Where do you get your hair done, man? It's always like it's just perfect all the time.
I've needed a haircut. No, this thing I'm having to get creative because I was actually a partner in a barbershop before, believe it or not. That was one of my business ventures that I had, and it's. I have this thing, and I've had it. It's cool that you bring that up. Like I'm usually like in my company polo, or today I'm in this. My grandmother, she took care of me when I was young, had this thing. I don't know if you've ever noticed, like back in the 20s, everything people dressed, and things more. She had this thing, like she wouldn't let me go to the store. If I didn't like change, like no wrinkled shirt, like do your hair. And you know what? Believe it or not, that's helped me in business.
Yeah.
Right now we have to stay home, but I've worked from home because I have a home office also with the business I own and everything. And I'm not gonna lie, not every day, but most of the time it's like my uniform, right? Like if a police officer goes to work, it just helps me like get in my mindset, right? Comb my hair, I get ready, whatever it is, and it's I don't know, it's just one of these things that I have that my wife gets annoyed sometimes. Like we're going to the girls' corner, I'm like. I don't know. But especially for work.
Yeah.
Like it's, like people know, like we're working from home, my family's here. They know, hey, at 10 right now, it's like, I'm not here. I'm working. There's going to be a time where we're going to go outside and throw the ball or what, but it's like my time, my uniform. And a lot of this is just mental. Like and since I was so young and my grandma's the one that started that, right? She was like, got to do this. And look, here we are, 38 years later, and it's still, it just becomes habit.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
there you have it, folks. We got Clark Kent and Superman. He's in his uniform, and he's a superhero for your credit. So you need to reach out at Texas
Appreciate it, guys.
Consumer. Hey, check in the links. We're gonna drop it in there. That's
Awesome.
all for
Guys, thank you guys again for having me. You can follow our Texas Consumer Credit, on Facebook. You can find me, Edward Araujo, on Facebook. You can find at Texas Consumer Credit on Instagram, at Edward Araujo on Instagram. I put a lot of this information out there all the time, so feel free to follow for, tips and information, things like that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. I just wanted to let everybody know that from our last live, we did say that we're gonna have a last episode with Edward. He's gonna close everything up for you guys. So that's gonna be next Thursday, and then we are gonna be having other events as well. So just stay tuned. Take advantage of Edward's advice. He's giving you guys advice worth thousands of dollars, for free. So definitely, take advantage of this and learn some stuff while you guys are at home.
And stay tuned. A lot of this steps that we've been taking, I'm going to give you guys a bunch of stuff next time that you're going to be able to use. And some of this stuff will make sense that we've been talking about. So definitely stay tuned, till the end of the next episode, the last episode next week. And I'm sure, Rosie and then Thomas and everybody, Jorge will be following up with you guys. I'm going to provide them with a lot of information. And I mean, I've got packets, letters. Again, I'm going to give them that resource of how you guys can send us collection letters. There's going to be a lot of things in there that you guys will be able to take away from this.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, we'll see you next time. See you next week.
All right.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.